Okay, I'll start the presentation. Today we're going to talk about the game of life, and our group consists of Kalyani, Raj, Rahul, Gaurav, and me. Let's start with an introduction of what exactly this game is about. Uh, so, uh, First, we're going to talk about the game of life. It was invented by John Conway, and this game was it's like a solitary game. One person can play it, and usually it's considered to be playable on a two-dimensional board, and each the board is made up of square cells. So you can see it on the right top. It's a just a two-dimensional board, and these cells can be in two states. So each state can be either on or off condition, and it means that it's either alive or dead. And each cell can eight neighbors. So we have shown over here that if you take the red box cell, he has eight neighbors, and each of them are in different states, either on or off. Now, usually we assume that the board wraps around so that even the corner cells, which are the top left corners or the top right corners, even they have eight neighboring cells. So when you actually imagine it as a wrapped around board, it comes in the shape of a torus, which you can see on the right corner. So now, what happens is that these cells, uh, depending on their configuration in one state, we apply some rules to it, and then in the next turn of the game, these rules determine what the status will be in the next generation. So now we're going to see what a typical gameplay looks like. uh, so what happens is that a player can start with any configuration. He just chooses an initial configuration. Then you apply some rules, and these rules will determine what the next generation will look like. Now, this game will continue. That the rules keep getting applied and applied and applied until three cases can happen. Either one, all the cells die, so then the game can't go forward, or there is no change between generations. So you even if you apply a rule again and again, it doesn't make a difference. And the third is an oscillating phase where the pattern just keeps repeating. So you end up at some pattern, and after 2-3 rounds you keep coming back to the same pattern. So that is called an oscillating phase. So this usually they consider that this game models an evolutionary system, which is like how cells behave or how life itself behaves. So now we're gonna look at the rules of the game, because these rules are important, and they are the way they were designed by keeping in mind of how
Right.
living cells actually react. Uh, so then there are four rules. The first rule is birth, that any dead cell, which is usually in a state of off, we represent, or by a state of zero, it can become alive only if it has exactly three living neighbors out of the eight neighbors. Then there is death. So death can happen in two ways: by loneliness. So an alive cell can die if it has less than two living neighbors. So if it has one or zero living neighbors, it is dead. And then death by overpopulation. So an alive cell can die if it has more than three living neighbors. So these it has so this actually represents a living scenario where if you are in a very overcrowded area, you have less access to resources, so you are more likely to die in a scenario that is more overcrowded. Again, if you're in a very lonely remote location, you it is less likely that you might survive. And so basically the fourth rule, which is just talks about survival, it says that an alive cell can survive if it has exactly two or three living neighbors. So these rules determine what the next generation will look like. And now to talk about initial configuration, Raj will explain how configurations and structures behave on this game.
Okay, so we'll talk about configurations and how these configurations affect the game. Okay, so there can be infinite configurations if the size of board is infinite, as any cell can be on or off. but there are three specific configurations which are simple, and they repeat themselves quite often. So one is degenerative structures, one is stable structures, and another one is repeating structures. Am I audible to all?
Yes, to me
Okay.
at least.
Yeah, so there are these three types of structures. Okay, so first we'll look at degenerative structures. So these are the structures they will die in the next generation or after a few generations. So if you see in the first image, that is the top left image, it dies after 4 generations, right? And the bottom image dies after 2 generations. Okay, so the simplest degenerative case can be only one cell alive, like this.
Okay.
So if you see in this, no dead cell has 3 living neighbors, right? So there will be no births, and there is only one living cell which has 0 neighbors, which has 0 living neighbors. So that cell will die. Okay, so new birth 0 and deaths 1. So in the next generation, all the cells will die and the board will be empty and the game will be over. Okay, taking one more example of degenerative case can be dying after few steps. So if you see this one, so if you see there is only one dead cell which has 3 living neighbors, this one, and there are 2 living cells which have only one neighbor. So these 2 cells will die, and this one cell will become alive in the next generation.
Yeah.
So now our board looks somewhat like this. Okay, so now if you see, there is no dead cell which has 3 neighbors, and all the living cells have only one living neighbor. So both the cells will die, and our board will be empty in the 3rd generation. So this is the case where all the cells die.
Hello.
So now coming to stable structures.
Hello.
Stable structures are structures
Yeah,
which...
somebody is asking a question.
Okay.
Hello. Yeah, Raj.
Yes.
Yeah, these red cells are living ones.
Yes.
So what are you checking in nearby cells? Like there are two or three living cells or
Neighbors, yeah. The numbers represent neighboring living cells. So like the first
Okay.
one,
So
can you see my pointer? This.
yeah.
So this, if you see, there are no neighboring cells to this one, so 0. And if you see this, this 2, so there are 2 neighboring cells, this one and this one. So that's why this is 2. It has 2 living neighbors.
Oh, okay.
So that's it.
Okay.
Okay, so coming to the stable structures, so these structures, they do not repeat, they stay on constantly. I mean, you see the first one, it is stable and it doesn't change. But if you see the third one, right, down here, so this becomes stable after 4 generations. Okay, and one human example can be Frank Senior, Frank Junior, then Frank Junior, Junior, etc. Frank the third, so on. The stable case, will take one example. So if you see, there is no living cell which has 3 living neighbors, and all the living cells have only 2 living neighbors. So there will be 0 births and 0 deaths, and this structure will remain like it is constantly. So the question is, will all structures end?
1 second,
Yes.
go back.
Yes.
All the living cells have 2 alive neighbors. When you say for the next one, if I have to be alive, it has to be exactly 3. Do I count myself?
No. The living cells for its survival need 2 or 3 cells.
Okay, so less than means strictly less than 2. But you said exactly 3. It has to be, if I...
No. For birth, it should be exactly 3. For birth.
Okay.
For survival, it needs to be 2 or 3.
2 or 3. Okay. All right.
So that 3 is only for birth.
All right. Okay. And anything above 3 will die. You will die.
Yes. Anything above 3 and below 2 will die.
All right.
Okay. So the question is, will all structures end? I mean, will they die or stabilize after some iterations? So what do you think? Okay, so not necessarily. Some structures will not die even till million generations, and they are called chaotic structures. So some structures will repeat themselves, some structures will migrate. So we'll check that in after a few slides. And some structures will just keep on going till the infinity. And all we can say is, on a finite board, the structures will repeat, because on a finite board we have finite number of cells, that is n cross m, n into m, and all the maximum number of structures possible is 2 raised to m into n, because any
That
cell
many
can be alive. Yeah.
That many total configurations are there. So if you have an
Yes.
infinite sequence, some configuration has to repeat. By
Yes.
what principle?
Huh?
What is the principle called? If you have an infinite set, if you have if you have n things, and if you put them into m things, and if n is greater than m, then at least 2 has to repeat. That is the principle you are applying here, isn't it? The principle you are applying here is that if I have an infinite sequence of configurations, and if my total number of actual configurations are finite, then at least one configuration has to repeat infinitely often.
Yes.
That is called what principle? Anybody?
Pigeonhole
Pigeonhole?
principle?
Exactly, it's called a pigeonhole principle.
So,
Yeah.
so when in this game, when one configuration will repeat, the next configuration will also repeat on its own.
Yes. Once you start repeating,
Ultimately,
the
it will
sequence
become a
of-
repeating
it's a
structure.
sequence which will be repeating. There will be a sequence which will be repeating.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so it's not necessary that all will die or stabilize. Okay. So we'll come to repeating structures. Am I audible?
But that is only on a finite border, because if your
Yes,
board
yes.
is infinite, there is no guarantee that it has to be repeated.
Yes, on an infinite board there can be infinite configurations, so it's not necessary that they will repeat.
Yeah.
So we'll come to repeating structures. So if you see the first structure, for one generation it is horizontal line, for one generation it is vertical line. In the next it becomes horizontal again. So similarly, like you see the bottom structure, it's called nebula, because it looks like a blast kind of thing, and it repeats itself continuously. Okay, so in the
So what
repeating
is the
case,
royal family of UK? Edward, George, Edward.
so if you see, we have
Okay, it's alternating
two
repeating. Okay.
two dead cells. Yes.
Yeah.
So if you see, we have two dead cells which have 3 living neighbors. So they will be born in the next generation, and we have two living cells which have only 1 living neighbor. So those two will die. So in generation 2 we have somewhat like this. So if you see, this board is just rotated 90 degrees as previous one.
Yeah.
Right. This board is same as the previous board, just rotated by 90 degrees. So so now in the next generation we will have a vertical line again. So in the next generation we'll have horizontal line again, and this will go on repeating till infinite time. Okay. So now I will show you one small chaotic structure. This F pentomino. It looks like F. It consists of only 5 living cells, but it takes nearly 1100 iterations if you simulate on a board of 100 by 200. But if you simulate on a bigger board, I tried on a 150 by 200 board also. So it took nearly 3600 iterations to stabilize. And on infinite size board, maybe it won't ever stabilize.
Okay.
So now Rahul will tell you a bit about code.
Okay, so what are you going to code?
So we have coded this game.
Okay.
Okay.
It was
Rahul.
actually given in the book, so we're just explaining it. Okay. So, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So now that we have some basic understanding about game of life, let's talk about the code. So what we are going to do first is some basic declarations. So we need a type of pause which is defining the x and y coordinate of a specific cell, and a type board which is a list of these positions. We also have height and width which are of type int. That basically define the size of our board. So it's kind of flexible. You can have a 10 by 10 board or a 100 by 100, whatever you want. So
Okay.
next slide. Okay, so now we are going to talk about some screen utilities. In this game of life, we are using something known as screen control code. So here in the CLS function, it is used to clear the screen, like whatever the previous generation it has printed. We are going to clear it using this control code, which is slash escape bracket 2j. These are these are actually predefined in Haskell. So you can, I'll share a link. You can look it up. There are many such codes to move your cursor up and down. And there's one
Mm-hmm.
in the go to
Okay.
function which takes in a position, and what it does is it takes your cursor to that specific xy coordinate where you have to print or do something. So we are constructing that specific code using by concatenating the y and x coordinate at the specific location in that code. As you can see that slash escape, and then we are appending the y coordinate, and then a semicolon. It's the syntax for the code, and then appending the x coordinate and then h. So what it's when we run the go to, it will take that xy coordinate, and our cursor will be at that xy coordinate. Then we'll talk about write at. What it does, it takes the position and then prints the specific character which we give it, a string
Mm-hmm.
at that position. It uses the do statement
Mm-hmm.
so that we can first go to that specific coordinate, and then we can put string. So basically printing that string by taking the cursor at that location first. Uh, okay, next slide. Now we'll be talking about some helper functions. So the first one is show cells. What this does is it takes in the board which has some positions xy coordinates in it, and then we are using the sequence which performs a list of actions in a sequence given. So we are doing iterating over the b, and we are doing write at p and o. So we are
Because
giving
the sequence underscore is just like a do statement, but on a
yeah,
list.
yeah, we can see the type of sequence over there.
Yeah.
Then we have is alive. What it does, it checks if the given position is alive or not. That is, it checks that the position is in the main board, that we have a list board, and the lm function which is predefined in the Haskell library, it returns a boolean which is true or false if the xy is in, if the given element is in that list, then it returns true, otherwise false. And similarly the is empty, it just returns the opposite of is alive. So
Okay.
it will return true if that cell is dead. Okay,
One
so
second.
uh,
All right. Yeah.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
So further, Kalyani will explain the next.
Okay, so now we need to define some more helper functions like neighbors. So if we are given any position of a cell, then we need to find out the adjacent 8 cells to it. So for that, we're going to use the neighbors function. and what is this list contains x minus 1, y minus 1, and all these coordinates that are at the neighbors to a particular cell. But let's suppose if we are calculating the neighbor for the position 1 1, then we know that the board wraps around it. So the actual neighbor, left neighbor to 1 1 will be 10 10. If the board is of cross section 10 cross 10. So for that we will use wrap function. So what it does is it takes a position on the board. Let's suppose if it takes 0 0, so it will return the position after the board is wrapped around. So it's a way for us to get by around the edge cases.
Yeah.
Okay. Next slide. Okay. So in the game there are two ways. In which the new cells are generated. A new configuration is generated. The first is a living cell survives, and the other is a new cell is born. So to calculate the survivors of a cell, we need, first of all, we need a function live neighbors. What it does is it takes in a board configuration and it takes a position of a cell and it will calculate the number of alive neighbors of that particular cell. So in this live neighbors, let's suppose if I give position P, so first it will calculate the neighbors of P, it will return us. Hello?
Yeah, continue.
So it will return us a list of the neighbors of position P. And then from that list, we will filter out all the positions that are alive, like that are a part of the board. And then we'll calculate the length of that list. So it will give us the number of alive neighbors to a particular cell. For a particular, for calculating the survivors in the board, what we'll do is we'll iterate over every position in the board and we'll see if the number of live neighbors to each cell is either 2 or 3. So that is how we have defined the survivors function. It takes in the board configuration and then it takes every element of the board, every alive cell of the board, and then it calculates the number of live neighbors through this function live neighbors BP, and if it checks if the number of these neighbors is 2 or 3. If that is the case, then it is appended to the survivors list.
Okay.
Next. Yeah. The next way in which the cells are born is the birth. In this case, a dead cell becomes alive if the number of alive neighbors to it is equal to 3. So we'll iterate over every position, that is every cell in the board. First we'll check if that cell is empty or not, that is it's dead or not. And that is checked by the is empty b x comma y, this function. It will return true if that particular position is a part of board or not, that is it's dead. Then we'll calculate the number of live neighbors to this, the number of living neighbors to that particular cell. And if it is equal to 3, then that particular cell will be appended to the births array, the array that will be returned. So the next generation, essentially the next configuration of the board, it will be a concatenation of the list survivors and births.
Yeah.
So the next generation function, it will take a board configuration and it will output, and it will be a concatenation of the function survivors B and births B, which will return the list of survivors and births.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we can look at this birth function, it is not very efficient because it is iterating over all positions in the board, and if the board is of very large, then it takes up a lot
Yeah.
of computational time.
Exactly.
So there is a way to optimize it, and it will be continued by Gaurav.
Okay.
Okay. So as Lenny explained that in the previous code for birth, if there is a board of size 100 cross 200, we'll be checking each and every cell if there is the number of neighbors is optimal for a birth, and that is not very efficient in the case of especially in the case of that 5-cell F pentomino that Raj showed us in the configuration, that it is just a 5-cell thing, but for that 5-cell thing we'll have to check every of these 200,000 cells, and that will be very time consuming. So what we have is a optimization over here. Wait, someone's in the waiting room. Yeah. And then what the optimization is that we only look at the neighbors of the living cells. We only look at the neighbors of living cells because only these have the chance of being alive in the next generation. And any cell which is like 2 spaces away from any of the living cells does not actually have a chance of being born, because there'll be only 0 living cells. So first we take all the neighbors of B. This neighbors function returns a list of neighbors, and then we so then we concatenate that list of lists, which is returned by this map function, and then we have that combined list of all the neighbors to every of these living cells. And then we remove the duplicates from this list, because any 2 cells which are together will have the same cell repeating as the neighbor twice.
Yeah.
And so to remove the duplicates, we have this function over here, which is of type EQA, and giving a list of A, it returns a list of A without the duplicates. So if it's an empty list, it returns an empty list. But if there is an X colon XS type of list, then it considers X to be part of the output and then applies the function recursively by filtering the list XS so that it is not equal to X.
Yeah. So this function is known as the sieve.
Yeah.
You know, have you heard of the sieve of Eratosthenes? The sieve of Eratosthenes. So one way we could generate prime numbers is by the sieve function. You could convert this RM dupes into something which generates the prime list of prime numbers very easily. For the sieve function works like this. You look at the prime list of numbers starting from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. You take 2, then put it into the list of primes, and then remove all multiples of 2 from the rest of the list. So then 4 goes away, 6 goes away, 8 goes away, and so on. Now you pick from the remaining list, you pick the next number, that is 3. You add to the list of primes and you remove all the multiples of 3. Then 4 has already gone by 2. Then 5 is remaining there, 6 is gone, 7 is remaining there, 8 is gone, 9 is gone, and so on. Next you pick the next number, and so on. So that's exactly. So this is a sieve function.
Yeah.
All right, continue.
So once these duplicates are removed, we have this list. We have these elements P. So we check if that element is currently empty. Only then the birth can happen. If it was not currently empty, then it would be part of survivors.
Yeah.
And then we check if that live neighbors around that element is exactly equal to 3, then it will be born. So we give it as output.
Yeah, what is the, everybody understand what is the word meaning of sieve? What is the name in Hindi for sieve? Sieve is this thing by which you filter
Clean
out
the grains.
huh? Yeah,
clean
grains.
some
What is it
grain
called?
or flour or something.
Yeah, so if you have to clear out grain to flour, then you put it in this this thing and then do this. What is it called in Hindi?
I don't know.
All right.
Okay, so next slide. So now we are at the main function life. It takes the board as input, which is the set of initial living cells, and it gives us an output on the screen. So life B is a set of operations. It firstly does clear screen, and then it calls this function called show cells of B, and then it calls this wait function with a integer of 50,000. We'll see what this does. And then it calls the life function recursively, giving the next generation of B. So we saw this next generation function, which was the like concatenation of the births and survivors of this generation. Okay, so we'll change the board by using this next gen function, and then we'll give it back to life, and again show cells will happen for that particular generation. So
Okay.
it will keep going on. So now what we can do is add to this how the game ends. We tried that also, not mentioned it here. So if there is no new cells adding to the board, like that means all the same cells are part of the board, that means it's a stable structure. And if there are no cells present on the board, that is the board is empty, then all the cells have died. We can make a check for that. And now what this wait function does is, it is a sequence of operations. Wait n is equal to sequence of a list of returns for each of the numbers from 1 to n. So it basically calls this return operation 50,000 times over here. This is just done to see the output at an optimal speed.
Yeah. So the point is that you cannot do any other IO operation apart from a return. Yeah. So that's why you use a return, because it has to be the operation has to be of type IO unit, and then you have to use something. But you could as well use 2 into 3. X equal to 2. Something like that. Yeah.
Okay, so now this is the Haskell program that will show us how the game will run. So this is run for 10 iterations only right now. Because if we keep running it, like this is a glider, so it won't end ever. And it will hang. We tried it yesterday and it just hung the laptop.
Which one?
This one.
Yeah, my laptop, it hanged when we tried for many iterations. So I just added another parameter for it to run for only n iterations. This 10 it gives. So how many iterations should it run? And this glider, it is predefined in the code board configuration. It is predefined in the board.
All right.
We can give any other configuration as well.
So glider with 20 hangs, you are saying?
It might, I don't know. We tried for 100 and it hangs.
Try 20.
Okay. Yeah, it works.
All right, that goes on. Very good. Why does it hang?
I don't know, sir. It might just go on for so much time.
So maybe you should try to compile it and then run it as a standalone program. Then you can actually assess the program, whether it is taking too much memory or whether you just, compiling it is very simple. You just put it as main equal to this life, and then you compile.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll try that.
Yeah.
Right now, there is some more slides. We'll go back to Raj.
Yeah.
He's going to tell us more about Game of Life.
Okay.
Can you all see the slide?
Yeah.
Can you all see my pointer?
Yes.
Okay. Fine. So we'll talk about undecidability in this game. Okay. So this game is see, you all must have heard of the classic undecidable problem, right? The halting problem. So if you give if you give a program and an input to the program, can you tell if the Turing machine running that program will ever stop or not? Like this is the classic halting problem. So no, we can't say that this will ever stop or not, because the only way we have right now is we can try for n iterations. If it stops, then we can say okay, it stops. If it doesn't stop, we can't say it will never stop. Maybe it stops after n+1 iterations. We don't know. So similarly, in the game of life also, we see in the game of life also, if you give an initial structure and a later structure, there is no algorithm that can tell the later structure will ever occur from the initial structure, because the only way we have is we can run for n times. If it happens, we can say okay, it occurs. If it doesn't, maybe it will occur after one more iterations. We don't know. So I will tell you. So why we are talking about game of life is, I mean, the game of life sounds pretty boring, right? I mean, what you can do is you can give only the initial structure, and then all you can do is watch. You can't even play it. Okay. So why this game of life is important is because it's computational power. The configurations in game of life can simulate logic gates, counters, state machines, Turing machines, even universal Turing machine. That means a whole computer. Okay, and in fact this is true. You have heard of the game Tetris? Tetris, like the blocks come down from the sky and you have to arrange those. Yeah, so that game, the whole game, including the logic and all, was implemented in the game of life. So I will talk a bit. So I won't go in much detail for Turing machines and universal Turing machines, but I will tell you about how we can implement logic gates and counters.
Okay.
So coming to game of life as logic gates. So what we can say is logic gates is just an interaction between streams of 0, 1s and input streams. Even in hardware version of logic gate, this is true. Like you have one high and one ground and there is one input, right?
Yeah.
So now for realizing streams of ones and zeros, we can use constant streams. So there are a few structures which can generate stream. So I will tell you about those. So constant stream of ones can be realized by a generating structure which will generate continuous objects, and an empty stream can be considered as stream of zeros. So now generating streams, what is it? So if you see this structure, so if you see, it is shooting a glider to the bottom right corner.
Yeah.
These two blocks collide, these two arrow-like structures collide, and they throw a glider to the bottom left, bottom right. These are called glider guns. This is the simplest version of a glider gun. It generates a glider after 15 generations, and they go on infinitely. I mean, they can generate infinite gliders. Okay, so these are called glider guns, and these glider guns, when they are shooting gliders, it can be considered a stream of ones. Okay, so in every 15 generation, we are getting a 1. So now if you see these two gliders, when they are coming together, you see, yeah, these two are gliders. One is approaching from left, one is approaching from right. When they collide, they both die. Okay, so this stream of gliders and this idea of dying of gliders, you can use it for making logic gates. So now we'll talk about the simplest logic gate, NOT gate. Okay. So for what we want for NOT gate is we'll need a glider gun, we need an input stream, and we need an output path. Okay. So so in the start, what we do is we will point the glider gun to the output, and we'll start shooting our gliders. So now if you see that when the input is 0, the output is getting gliders. That means output is 1 when the input is 0. So it is working as a NOT gate. But now if you see the input is on, input is on, the glider gun stream and the input stream will collide, and both the gliders will die. Thus output will get no gliders, and you can see when the input is 1, the output is 0. So that's how we can implement a NOT gate using gliders. Is it clear?
Yeah, to me at least, yes.
Okay, so what we need for AND gate is we'll be needing a glider gun. We'll have two inputs, input A and input B, and there is one output. One thing to note here is this output, this glider gun stream is not reaching the output. The output is only half the bottom, and the glider stream is passing from the side. Okay, so if you see both input A and input B are off, then output is also 0. Okay. Now if you turn on input A, so what will happen is the glider gun stream and input A stream will cancel out each other, but still output is 0. Okay, so now if only input B is on, still the same happens. The glider stream and the input stream cancel out, but still output is 0.
Okay.
So, but now if you see, if you turn on the both the streams, the glider gun and input A cancel out each other, and input B stream reaches output, hence making the output 1. So if you see, so if you see the input, when both are on, output is 1. So this is a nice way of arranging glider guns and inputs to get a logic gate.
So with only glider guns, you can generate all kinds of gates, huh?
Yes, with these two, you can generate all. Okay, so you can generate, so you can use Game of Life for your predicate logic. Okay, so now coming to the counters. So what we can do, so what is the observation is, if you shoot two gliders at a block is just four living cells in a square. 4 living cells close to each other. Okay, so if you shoot two gliders at a block, the block will move closer to the source. So that is the observation. And if you shoot 3 gliders, the block will move further away. So they need to be in the specific configuration to do it correctly, but it happens. So you can use that sliding block as a memory for your counter. You can start from 0, that is the block closest to the source. Then you can push it away for doing a +1 operation, and you can pull it for doing a -1 operation. So that's how you can use Game of Life as counters to store memory. So now you know. So Game of Life can act as memory because it can simulate counters. Can act as finite state automata as well. That's why we can simulate a whole Turing machine on Game of Life.
Actually, you know this fact that a finite state automata with 2 counters is actually equivalent to a Turing machine. There is it's called 2 counter automata. I'll share the link.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is the.
Yeah. So if you know how to simulate finite state automata and 2 counters, then you already have Turing machine. Yeah.
Okay. So this is a Turing machine.
This is exactly
simulated on the Game of Life. So what it has is, on the top, you can see my pointer, right?
Yeah.
So what it has is, on the top, it has a input stack. On the bottom, it has output stack, like right here. And this is a computational device. So you can program it to add numbers, subtract numbers, maybe take or maybe do some logic operations. And this is the input output devices. Okay. So how this stack is structured is, if each stack has a container, small container, which has reflecting walls. Okay, and these reflecting walls can reflect gliders. So in each container, you can store up to 3 gliders, which will reflect off the walls, and they won't collide. So so you can store the gliders as they are. So
Okay.
when you can store 3 gliders, you can represent it is same as representing 3 bits.
Mm-hmm.
So if glider is there, you can say it's 1. If glider is not there, it is 0. So you can
Okay.
represent 3 bits. So that is number from 0 to 7. So that's how you can represent 0 to 7 in this stack. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is how a Turing machine is implemented in the game of life. In fact, they have implemented a whole processor in a game of life.
Uh-huh.
A full processor which can do all the computations was implemented in the game of life. I will
Okay.
share the paper with you.
Okay.
Okay, so now relation between halting problem and the game of life. So if you see, the Turing machine is one of the configurations in game of life, right?
Yeah.
So if you can find out if the later configuration occur in game of life, you can say the Turing machine will stop.
Yeah.
Because you can encode you can encode the initial pattern as the input to UTM, and you can give later configuration as halting state of UTM. So if you can say from the initial pattern, you can go to later configuration, the UTM will also go from the input state to halting state. So yeah, that's why this game is important, and it can represent all the computations. It has a power of universal Turing machine.
With very few rules.
Yes. So the fun fact is, earlier this game was implemented with actually 20 rules, 20 states.
Uh-huh.
But to make it easy, it was originally implemented by John von Neumann.
Uh-huh.
But to make it easy, this was again the rules were reduced, and states were also reduced by Conway, and this is the one. This is the
Yeah. So this the von Neumann's idea was that he called it cellular automata because he was more interested in how plants replicate and so on. So the idea is that you have more rules and you can actually, because right now we have only 2 or 3 rules: this birth rule and survive rule. But in von Neumann's cellular automata, which is a generalization of this game of life, you can have arbitrary rules, and then you study cellular automata. There are so many problems about cellular automata because it's not like it's computation on a 2D plane, and cellular automata you can even generalize to n-dimensional plane.
Mm.
And yeah, so Conway was a mathematician. He was a British mathematician who was initially interested in game theory, and he solved a famous problem of finding simple groups. He created a finite symbol group, which was a really large size. It's called a monster group. That's how he got famous. And then he came to United States. He joined Princeton University. And while there, he got interested in this kind of things. And he was also interested in recreational mathematics. So these are all part of his recreational mathematics, where he developed so many games and puzzles and so on. And yeah, so he was all through his life, he was known as a kind of a what is it, nutty mathematician, that kind of a figure. And then yeah, but he was a great figure. Even after retired, he held a emeritus position in Princeton. He recently passed away, just last week, by corona. All right. Any other questions? It was a really fantastic talk. And again, you guys have gone very well ahead of what was asked. All these things, Raj, is not there in the book, no?
No, sir. Raj.
Yeah.